So Paul, have you got any sort of tips as to what might set an application apart from others?
Think about the person reading the application. Make sure that your application stands out. If you were reading that application not knowing anything about the project, would you be able to get a clear understanding of what the applicant was wanting to do?
So hello and welcome to our very first episode of Beyond Funding, which is a Benefact Trust podcast. And we're here today to talk with a wonderful Senior Grants Officer, Paul Playford, and he's going to tell us a little bit about funding and how to secure funding. Hi Paul, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Alice. How are you?
Very well. So this is the first one, but it's going to be very relaxed. So it's just to find out a bit more about funding in general and the work at Benefact Trust. So first of all, can you tell us a bit more about yourself and the role that you do at Benefact Trust?
Absolutely. I've been with the organisation for over 30 years now, and for 20 plus of those years, I worked for the group in various roles. And then 9 years ago, I got the opportunity to jump over the fence, as it were, and join what was then All Churches Trust. And it's just been an amazing journey. Before, when I was working for the group, you used to see these sums of money being given by the group to All Churches Trust, but never really appreciated where they went and what they did. But it's been absolutely fantastic and really sort of humbling and inspirational to see the work that is supported through these grants. So yes, my specific area is Wales, the West Midlands, the South and Southwest. So I've got that part of the country. But also, I've got a sort of specific responsibility for a Methodist grants programme that we run. And also, I look after our Heritage Grants programme as well.
So can you tell us a bit about the funding available for churches and charities?
Right, well, there's a lot of funding out there available. It's just a case of picking the right funding for the specific project that you want to do. So some funders will just support capital costs. Others will support revenue costs only, so salaries and that sort of thing. Some funders will only support new or expanded activity. Other funders will actually support ongoing costs, running costs, that sort of thing. So the important thing to remember is that there are a lot of funders out there, but not all of them will necessarily support the project that you're running.
Yeah, I guess research is key, isn't it?
It is, absolutely.
So where can an organisation look for funding?
Well, if it's a Christian charity or a church, then a good place to start is the Christian Funders Forum website. As the name suggests, it's a forum of Christian funders that will support Christian or church-related projects. You can do that by typing Christian Funders Forum into Google or another search engine and going onto their website, and you'll be able to find all of the funders that are part of that forum. So I would say that's a good place to start. If you talk to a particular funder, if you've got a relationship with any particular funder, for example, if you're talking to us at Benefact Trust, we would be able to point you in the direction of perhaps other funders who might be able to support the project that you're involved in.
Yeah, that's a nice thing, isn't it? Is that at the end of the day, everyone's looking to fund and support these projects. So it's not necessarily a competitive thing. So funders will point out other funders if they think there's grants to be had elsewhere.
Absolutely. And that is the essence of the Christian Funders Forum. It's about sort of funders coming together to share knowledge, to support each other. Because at the end of the day, we're here for the benefit of our beneficiaries. So we're not here to make life difficult. We want to make it as easy as possible for those that we're trying to support.
Exactly. So following on from that, can you tell us a bit more about Benefact Trust funding specifically?
Right, yes. I mean, we have 5 main grant programmes. 2 of them, I suppose you would call our flagship programmes. The first of those is our Community Impact Grants programme. And these are grants which are, as the name suggests, given for projects which are going to have an impact on communities. So therefore, churches and Christian charities, as I said earlier, they're for projects that are innovative and are going to have an impact on the communities that these charities and churches serve. So that's our Community Impact Grants programme. We support new and expanded activity through that. So, for example, if you're a youth charity and you're supporting young people and you see the need increasing and you want to increase capacity, then the Community Impact Grants programme would be the one to apply for. We've also got our Building Improvement Grants programme, and those are for sort of urgent repairs, small aesthetic improvements to buildings. So that's another of our sort of key grants programmes. But then we've got some other programmes which are perhaps a little bit more specialised. So our Heritage Skills for Christian Buildings programme is about supporting apprenticeships, trainees, scholarships in those skills that are essential for maintaining those buildings. Then we've got a dedicated Methodist grants programme, which is funded by a donation we get from Methodist Insurance each year. And again, those are projects which are about sort of community engagement, church growth, and looking to make a difference to the communities that these churches serve. And then finally, we've got our crisis response grants programme, which isn't a programme that people can apply to, but it's a programme, as the name suggests, which is there to respond to emergencies that crop up. We can't respond to every emergency, but there are some which really resonate with the Trust. And in those instances, we would work with partners who are expert in that area so that we can get the funding to the front line as quickly as possible.
Brilliant. And there's been an evolution of the grants programmes this year, hasn't there? Could you tell us a bit about the reason behind the kind of evolution of the grants programmes?
Absolutely. As I say, I've been with the organisation for 9 years now, and a question that kept coming back to myself and my colleagues was, why do you only support capital projects, which until this year, by and large, that's all we did. I remember going to a seminar of potential beneficiaries once, and we just launched a programme supporting youth work and children and families work, but it was just supporting capital expenses. And the question that came to me is, we don't need capital expenses. What we need is funding for our children and families worker or our youth worker. And so I think the trustees took that on board and realised that actually we needed to be more than just a capital funder. We needed to be a funder which supported revenue costs as well. Also, we've seen the Trust supporting more and more projects which have not just been about preserving buildings, but actually have seen us through some of our thematic programmes in the past, supporting very much more community-based projects. And through that, not only have we come to realise that there's some fantastic charities out there doing some fantastic work, but also there's a huge amount of need. And I think what the Trust wants to do is to actually do its bit in trying to address and support some of those needs and make a difference ultimately to those people that need it most.
Yeah, that's really important, I think, isn't it? To recognise the need that's out there, and if we can do something to support that, then that's brilliant.
Absolutely.
So if we're talking about applications, what top tips would you give to organisations who are preparing to apply? So maybe those initial preparations that you might make before you actually put in an application.
I think research is key. Not every funder will support every project. There are things that we wouldn't support as a funder, not because there's anything wrong with them, but every funder has to have a focus. There's one trust which is part of the Christian Funders Forum, and when their representative talks at events that I go to, what he will say is, don't just read the website once, read it twice. And I think that there's something to be said for that. I'd also say when you're submitting your application, it's important to make sure that you get the key points across. If you think about a funder, you're asking a funder essentially to invest in your project. So if you're looking for investment, what do you think the investor wants to know about the project so that you convince that funder that they should be investing in your project? So whilst it's interesting maybe to have a lot of information about the history of the organisation or the history of the building that you're wanting to support, and it is interesting to have that information, but it's not necessarily relevant to the application. What the funder wants to know is, what you want to do, what impact you will have, the outcomes that you're looking to see, and how you'll measure those outcomes so that you know that the project has been successful. The other thing I would suggest is if it's a large project, then consider investing in the services of a professional fundraiser. It does involve an outlay because you're recruiting somebody for that period of time, but it can actually pay dividends by recruiting somebody who knows how to navigate the intimidating or overwhelming landscape of fundraising.
Thanks for that, Paul. There's some really good tips there. So following on from that, have you got any sort of do's and don'ts? Well, actually, no, we talked about the do's. So have you got any do's or things to avoid when it comes to applications?
I think just picking up on my earlier point about making sure your application is concise and to the point, I would say don't waffle in an application. And also, if there's a question on the application form, make sure you answer it. Sometimes questions can appear to be similar to a question you've answered before, but the reason it's there is because there is a subtle difference, and the funder is looking for specific information. So if you've got a question on an application form, don't just say, see my answer to the previous question or anything like that, because each question is there for a reason.
And I guess it also comes back again to the research point, because if you're reading through the application in advance, then you know the questions that are being asked, and you can really think about how you're going to answer those questions, can't you?
Absolutely. Research is key, in my opinion.
So, Paul, have you got any sort of tips as to what might set an application apart from others?
Just the one thing I would say in response to that question is think about the person reading the application. Make sure that your application stands out. If you were reading that application not knowing anything about the project, would you be able to get a clear understanding of what the applicant was wanting to do? So think about the person that's reading the application, and then fill in your application form accordingly.
And how much time should an organisation allow until hearing back about an application?
That's a difficult question, because different funders will have different ways of assessing applications. But what we tend to say is between 4 and 6 months, because you're very much reliant on trustee meetings taking place and that sort of thing. So if you haven't heard back within 2 weeks of submitting the application, don't worry about it. But all funders should actually make reference on their websites to how quickly you'll get a response.
So if people are kind of skimming through this podcast, what are the 3 key points that you'd like people to take from this interview?
The first is do your research. That is so important, and you can't overemphasize the need to do your research. The second, I think, is making sure that your application stands out from the crowd, that it's clear, that you make it very clear what your intentions are, the impact that the application will have, and how you'll measure that impact, so that you know that the project has been a success. And the third, I would say, is don't get overwhelmed by it. If you're somebody who's never done fundraising in the past, and you've been given this task of raising, I don't know how much for this project, it can seem like a mountain to climb. It can be overwhelming, and you think, where on earth do I start? I would say take each step at a time. Split it into bite-sized chunks, so that you're not looking at the project as a whole, but you're looking at it in small pieces. Maybe talk to organisations that have been on that journey before. I mean, our website has a whole host of churches and Christian charities that we've supported and who are happy for us to share their stories.
So Paul, from your point of view, is there anything else that you think, is a key advice for someone on their fundraising journey?
I don't think there's a lot that I need to add to what's already been said, really. The only thing I would perhaps say, which I don't think I've covered, is get to know your funder. And by that, I mean actually sort of, if it's appropriate, ring them up. We have a team of grants officers that go around the country, and we find that actually that personal engagement is not only great for us because we get inspired by seeing these projects, and but also we find that our beneficiaries or potential beneficiaries find it really helpful as well.
And all our grants officers are very friendly, aren't they?
All of our grants officers are extremely friendly.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Paul. That's been really, really insightful, and hopefully there's some really helpful tips for everyone. Thank you so much for listening. And if you're interested in finding out more about our grants, you can find everything you need to know on our website at benefacttrust.co.uk. And keep your eyes peeled for the next episode.